Loki, without doubt, my favorite Disney Plus show right now. Well, that is of the Marvel ones. I gotta say, this whole show is pretty good. Every single episode. Every single episode had me just like on the edge of my seat. Suspense in the air. There's almost every single episode of this show I liked. If you were to ask me which episode in this show is my favorite, most of them. Where to start? Really? Where to start? Well, here's where to start actually. Spoiler alert. I know my review for this show is a little late. This show ended last week. The finale was last week, but getting my thoughts together. But this time I really had to get my thoughts together on this one. So this version of Loki is going back to Endgame, that branched reality that the Avengers created when they went back in time. This show is about the Loki that got away with the Tesseract in that movie, in that timeline. And he gets arrested by the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, which I know obviously originates from the comics, but delving into what the Time Variance Authority is all about, just the concept alone. Time police that manage the flow of time and that operate in, not reality, because they're not in any reality, they're just outside of reality. It's so weird and crazy. In fact, my favorite shot, or maybe one of my favorite shots, if not my absolute favorite shot in this whole show, is when Loki and Mobius are looking out beyond at the rest of the TVA, how it just stretches on and on and on, and that was one of the key moments for me watching this show, where I was like, I'm gonna love this show. This show is really gonna go, who knows? Who really knows where it's gonna go? And in the second episode, oh my god, that blew my freaking mind. And the show went on up until the very end, the finale, which we will definitely get to talking about. Let's talk about some of the characters in this show. Loki's great. I think, as a Marvel fan, I never wasn't too crazy about Loki. I mean, he's a great character, but I personally wasn't too crazy about him. But this show really gave him the attention that he deserved, as the Disney Plus shows are doing. giving lesser known characters or characters that just didn't have enough time that they should have, giving them the proper attention and character development that they definitely deserved. So Loki's character in the show, I'm really feeling for him now. If I didn't before, I really am now. He's getting much more fleshed out, becoming very different from the Loki that we've seen. He's very much a good guy now, at this point. Sylvie's to think, I think. And Sylvie's great. I feel really tortured character though. And in the last episode, I was like, after watching that last episode, that choice she makes, it really, if that doesn't tell you that her character is too far gone, then she's just dead set on revenge. That's her whole objective in this show. Dead set on having revenge on the TVA. And it's painful to watch, in that last episode where she just refuses to listen to Loki. When they finally confront the man behind the curtain, he who remains, it's pretty, her true self, I think, really came out. I mean, she's gotten close with Loki throughout the show, but it's unfortunate that their paths were really never that aligned. I don't know what's going to happen to who knows what will happen to Sylvie, but if you ask me, it's going to be really hard to get her to come back from that dark place where she's been her whole life, running from the TVA. It's going to be hard to get trust, that trust back, if there was any. She never trusted anybody, no matter what. So that's pretty sad. Let's get on to my favorite side character in this whole show, or probably my favorite character overall in this show. Mobius. Ancient Mobius. We did not see him on a jet ski. I feel like we will eventually, but I don't know, for some reason I'm not one to tend to hold on to funny, fan theories like that are just kind of like ha ha ha. But I don't know, I was kind of getting convinced that that's what we might see by the end of this show. Mobius, he's great. He's a very cool character, I think. He's much more he's very much not like the other TVA people and the other agents or soldiers. He's much more looser, I think. He's much more chill. He's much more level-headed in terms of decision-making, I think. Where everybody else in the TVA is just kind of strictly do what you gotta do. But Mobius is like, no, hold on, let's do this another way. So he really stands out. For me, he really stood out. And Owen Wilson is the perfect choice for this role, a great performance as this character, who by episode 4, when he supposedly was killed by Ravonna Renslayer, it was like, damn. It's a gut punch. Then he came back and we found out he wasn't really dead in the next episode. But okay, good. Speaking of Ravonna Renslayer, I gotta say, quite the deceptive character. Who knows where her character's gonna go. Literally, I mean, where did she go by the end of that episode? She might meet up with Kang. Considering, I guess their love interests in the comics, so that might be where that's going. Speaking of Kang, that last episode, I mean, pretty much almost every episode in this show is my favorite episode. This one, I pretty much rewatched the most. Just to see and hear He Who Remains talk, explain his backstory, explain where things are going to go, or where he's hoping things are going to go, because he really orchestrated a lot. And he's not exactly a good guy, but he's not exactly a bad guy either. He helps contain the timeline, prevent any future multiversal wars. He did do it though by doing the most horrible things. Taking people's free will, which, oh boy, can't wait to talk about that whole deal of free will or no free will. But this is without a doubt going to be a bigger villain than Thanos. Much more complicated, much more deceptive. He really has literally planned everything out in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, now multiverse, thanks to Sylvie. And Sylvie's decision really pretty much was instigated in part by He Who Remains, asking if she could trust Loki, trying to get them to split apart, because they did after all create a Nexus event, creating another timeline with their connection. So I guess that's a theory I am willing to buy, that he did indeed intentionally create a divide between the two. Personally, I think it was always there, the divide. It just didn't split far enough until this last episode, because there really wasn't a real trust on Sylvie's part, at least, though Loki was willing to trust and was hoping to be trusted again. So that was, it's really, the way their dynamic ends by the end of this episode is a little heartbreaking. Locations. Great locations. I know they were all CGI, but again, the creativity, the uniqueness, and just the concept is the Void, a place at the end of time where everything meets, all of time basically is in one place, doesn't move. Remind me of Land of the Lost a little bit, actually. That is pretty much the Land of the Lost. Lamentus 1. I love just Roxcart, just the whole... Every one of these places has one thing in common. It's the eeriness, the uncertainty of all these. But even Roxcart, it's a superstore, a retail store in the future, and during a hurricane, and it's just something doesn't feel right about it, you know. This constant feeling of what is this place that you're constantly asking yourself. The mystery. I love the void. You know, classic all the Lokis that we got to saw. Classic Loki was a standout. I liked Alligator Loki. Or Croaky, as some people on the internet are calling him. Croaky? Which, you know, Loki, I think, makes a little more sense, don't you think? Especially because he's an alligator. So it was great. Oh god, the Thanos copter. I burst out laughing when I saw the Thanos copter. And then Throg showed up for a second. Great Easter eggs. Definitely the best Easter eggs in the MCU, or you know, just a couple of the best. The Thanos copter is definitely one of my favorites. Miss Minutes. You know, she reminded me a lot of Mr. DNA. And then turns out that is in fact what the character is based off of, Mr. DNA. Although Miss Minutes she's pretty much a real character herself in this show. Which is pretty great. Even a goofy little joke character like that had a major part to play to an extent in this show. She's apparently been in cahoots with He Who Remains the whole time. Which, by the way, how was she able to teleport from a place at the end, literally at the end of time, back to the TVA, which is not exactly in its own timeline, but still. She's a hologram, right? Who knows? Oh man, I gotta not question things like that anymore. That's not the things, those aren't really things to question about. But, you know what I do question? Is there really free will in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? This is something I've seriously been thinking about a lot. I'm not kidding. My brain's been rattling so much about this question ever since the first episode. Personally, I think yes, there is free will. But if it's serious, like it somehow it branches another timeline, then the TVA interferes. I can't imagine like everything that we see in the MCU in the last 24 I think movies now that we have in the MCU and the Disney Plus shows coming out. I can't believe that it was all scripted by the TVA or He Who Remains. I like to believe that everything that happens. But if it's serious enough that it causes a branch, another timeline, that's when the TVA takes over. That's what I got from this show. Again, I've been questioning so much about the TVA's role in this show, like theorizing myself where they might go with what the TV is really about. What are the timekeepers really up to? Back when we thought the timekeepers were legit. You know, there's a scene in episode 2. Mobius, Loki having lunch together, and Loki's like pressing Mobius on, okay, what is the TVA? Do you guys really not believe free will exists? And I watched that scene, I'm like, yes, Loki, press him, get answers out of him. These are the kinds of scenes I want to see, these like, the self-existential themes in the show are bonkers. This is what I really liked the most about this show. This is truly a mystery show. A very different kind of mystery than the usual mystery TV shows or movies that we're used to. You know, because this is set in a comic universe where you can do anything, and this is a very unique idea that I think really paid off in this show. I loved it. I loved the whole concept of the TVA and everything that went on in this show. You know, it's stuff like Captain America going back in time and, you know, living with Peggy Carter, which obviously created a must have created a branch. And the TVA, like, questioning whether or not if that was okay with the TVA. And that's really, like, questions like that, or like things like that really keep the fans wanting to know more. And not just the show, but the broader MCU. You know, it's really such an expansive universe. So many great theories to talk about, a lot of things to theorize, many of which could go unanswered, many of which do get answered. Like, remember with Red Skull, we didn't know, there were theories maybe he was transported by the Tesseract to somewhere else in the universe, and Infinity War answered that question, yes. And this show really gave birth to a lot of theories, I think. Online, you know, within the fan base. It kind of reminds me, I mentioned in my last Marvel Disney Plus review, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, how, remember the character, Danya Madani, who we didn't meet, but it was mentioned that she was dying from tuberculosis because of the overpopulated place that she was living in. That is a speck of an example of what Thanos was talking about, his motivation. That one little thing was his whole motivation, to create things like that happening because of overpopulation. I think this is mind-blowing how well, in just little ways, as well as extreme ways, the MCU really does connect, and just so beautifully. Anyway, let's get back to Loki. Yeah, He Who Remains, he is a great villain, anti-hero, who knows? You know, it's a bit of a gray area. It's a little complicated, but Kang, his variant, I can tell right now he's going to be one of the best villains. Better than Thanos, better than, just better. The best villain in the MCU that we're about to see. If He Who Remains is this complex and manipulative and deceptive, and really literally has planned everything that was going to happen, I can't wait to see what Kang's all about. Because while He Who Remains was rather arguably benevolent, Kang is gonna be the opposite. And I can't wait to see that polar opposite, that big difference between the two. When we see Kang possibly, I think, making his first appearance in Ant-Man Quantumania, or maybe before then, I don't know. I guess Loki Season 2 is going to come out around the time that Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, I believe it's called, yes. It's going to come out probably the same time, so we might see him in Season 2 first. Seriously, I do believe free will exists in the MCU, and it's not all controlled, even by He Who Remains. He Who Remains totally didn't... I mean, there's this connection, there's this thing going on in the internet right now, read about it, where an exact moment in the WandaVision finale, the exact time frame as the Loki finale, where they match up. As soon as Wanda becomes Scarlet Witch, it's the exact moment in the same time frame in Loki where He Who Remains says, "We just crossed the threshold." So that I can believe, that Wanda split the multiverse when she became Scarlet Witch. She is going to be in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness after all. And now the Multiverse of Madness has been unleashed because of Sylvie, who, depending on who you are, you should, whether you want to thank her or blame her, that's up to you. I say maybe a little bit of both. So I can't wait for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I was already pretty much looking forward to that a lot, but now I'm really I gotta see where this multiverse narrative is gonna go. And that comes out, that Multiverse of Madness is next year, early next year. So, yeah, it's a lot to look forward to. There really is. Already was before, but we all better prepare ourselves for what the multiverse is going to bring. now that it's here. Alright, that's the end of my Loki review. I really love this show, guys. I really love this show. And season 2 is going to be... who knows? It's crazy. Alright, I'll see you at the next react. Take care.